Hello everyone, and thank you for checking out this video. My name is Matt Buffano, and I'm a sports writer at the Citizens Voice in Wilkes-Barre, bringing you another interview. And today's interview subject is LeShawn Hammett, head men's basketball coach at Penn State Wilkes-Barre. Penn State Wilkes-Barre Mountain Lions, one of the hidden gems in the Wyoming Valley sports scene. Just 2 years ago, at the end of the 2018-19 season, they won a national championship, which, as you'll learn in this video, was the culmination of many years of hard work between LeShawn and his father, Leroy Hammett. Leroy, 71 years old, died last month due to coronavirus complications. Certainly a tragic story, a tough thing to talk about in this interview, but it is an interesting story. As you'll learn, Leroy was a man of extraordinary faith and values, and helped his son in every way he could with his basketball career, following him from Cecil College in Maryland to the national championship game at Penn State Wilkes-Barre. One of the few times that LeShawn had ever seen his father cry, and those were tears of joy, obviously. So we reflect on Leroy's legacy here and also the circumstances surrounding his death, since unfortunately the coronavirus has played such a big role in our world in the last couple weeks and months. So with no further ado, I hope you enjoy this interview, and you could read the story to accompany this in Wednesday's edition of the Citizen's Voice. Thanks for reading, and thank you for viewing and listening. So, take me through what your father's role was on that team and on your team for the past several seasons.
Well, it all starts at the beginning. I was coaching at a school called Cecil College, which was a junior college in Maryland. And my dad had just retired from working 46 years for a company in New York, for an engineering company in New York. And I got the job as a head coach at a junior college. I had 15 scholarships, and I had 3 returning players. And so I pretty much didn't have time to hire a staff. I had pretty much had to find players. I got the job like late June. And my dad had just retired maybe about 8 months before. So he was, sitting at home and, just doing what retired people do. I made my money. I've enjoyed myself. My father retired from being an engineer. My father also was an entrepreneur. My father owned a barbershop and a beauty salon in the Bronx in New York. And he wound up traveling with me the whole summer to help me find recruits and find players. And we built a team. And at the end of the summer, it's time for me to move into my apartment in Maryland and my house in Maryland. And we were going to talk, and it was pretty much time to start school year. And the first thing I said to him was, why don't you come coach with me for a year? Like, you've seen me put this team together. You've helped me. You gave me your input. My father played his college basketball at Benedict College in South Carolina. My father, he played some semi-pro ball growing up. And I'm like, your expertise, I could use it. It's my first year coaching. I played at Luzerne, I'm pretty sure you know, and, won some championships there. And I played Division I at St. Francis. I played professionally overseas, and my father was a huge part of my basketball career. So why not come coach with me? My first year, we take a team to the national tournament, and we lose in the semifinal round. After the game was over, you know how seasons end. Everybody's in the locker room. The coach says, find something to say. And I thank the guys. I thank the players for, believing in us and coming to the program. I think some of the sophomores who are going to graduate. I thank my coaching staff. And I thank my father last. And I said, I thank you for going on this ride with me, because, to see it through, and I wish we could have won it all for you, but it just didn't work that way. But I thank you for everything you did. And I said, I know at that time my father was retiring and him and my mom were moving south. And I said, I'm going to miss you, but, I know you'll come to some games. And my father said, I'm coming back next year. I want to win a national championship. And for 6 years, we chased the national championship. And year after year after year, my dad came back trying to win the national championship. We actually, knock on wood, we did it last year, which is It's probably the best thing right now that keeps me going as far as coaching and as far as life, because something that, as you know, being a sports writer, 99% of the people don't ever do is win a national championship, no matter what level it is, Division I, Division II, Division III, whatever. Like, to win a national championship is something that's virtually impossible, and we chased it for 6 years, and we actually did it. I remember leaving my last job to take the Wilkes-Barre job because of my history with Scott Minor. I didn't know if my dad would come with me, but he wanted to win. He wanted to be a part of my journey, but he also wanted to win a national championship, and it was something we made as a goal. His role, even though he was a voluntary assistant, was pretty much the role of everything. My father recruited. My father was a part of the day-to-day operations. He was a part of the scouting team. My father did skill development with players. He moved pretty well. He was really healthy for 71 years old. And I think that's probably the reason why his death is so devastating, because my father was a guy who, before practice, got on the treadmill and jogged for 30 minutes, and then for 10 minutes he rode the bike, and then walked a mile on the treadmill, every day, 5 or 6 days a week. And he was in pretty good health to be 71. I'm 39 years old, and I aspire to say, hey, at 71 years old, I want to be in that type of shape. I want to be that mobile, and I want to be around. And my father was more than just a coach for our team. He was a father to some kids who didn't have fathers. He was a grandfather to kids that didn't have grandfathers. He was a very religious man. We prayed before practice. We prayed before every game. We prayed after games. We prayed before team meetings. My father was a prayer warrior for our team. And guys went to him in counsel when they needed prayer individually. He wore so many hats on my staff to be a guy who wasn't getting paid, But as far as our that journey and that championship team, man, he was the only one, and as crazy as it sounds, he was the only one that believed in our biggest moment of weakness. We lost in a conference championship game at the buzzer last year. After being picked to win the conference, we were 18-1, and with 1.8 seconds left, the tip-in goes in by another team, and we lose. And I remember the locker room was probably, I've never been in a place, other than maybe a funeral, where I've seen 20 people in the room crying hysterically. And my dad was the only one that after the game, we prayed as a team, and he said, God has something bigger for us. And at that moment of weakness, no one's really seen the bigger picture. And my father was just the one that seen it. And a week later, we're national champions. That was the type of faith that he had in this life and God. And he was special. He was in my eyes, and I could be biased because he's my dad, but he was an angel on earth.
And does your faith, assuming you share, a strong spiritual bond with your father, has that helped at all in these last couple days?
Yes, it has. It has. I joke with my dad all the time, and I say that he's a little close. He's got all of God's cell phone numbers. I just got a few. The last 6 months of his life was probably, me and my father bonded on so many levels. We bonded as father and son. We bonded as, coach and assistant coach. We bonded as fathers, because I have kids as well. I have 4 kids. We bonded as basketball players who both played the game. We bonded on so many different things. In the last 6 months of his life, we bonded on a spiritual level that I had never bonded with my father in 39 years. We started a routine of reading the Bible. I read the Bible every day before practice, but we actually read the Bible a few times. We read the Bible in the morning over breakfast, and then we talked about what we thought of that moment at night before we went to bed. And no matter how late it was, we had that conversation at night. And if we had a game and time got past us, the next morning we talked about it. And the last 6 months of his life it was a spiritual growth for me that I hadn't had. It has helped me be able to cope with this. I'm not at peace with his death yet. I can say that, but and that's just because there were so many things that I feel like went wrong in this process. With the hospital, I thought that there was a lot more they could have did that they didn't. So I'm not at peace with his death, but it's helped me be able to cope with it and to deal with it. I have gotten so many calls, text messages, emails. People have reached out to me in the basketball community as well as outside of the basketball community. It has brought me joy that my father had so much of an impact on so many people that has helped me be able to process and deal with it. He was an amazing man. I wish I had him a little longer, because even though we won a national championship last year, it was so much more that I felt like we were going to be able to accomplish and do together. For the last 8 years, my father has sat in that first chair. I don't sit down. I don't know how many games you've been to, but I don't sit down. I coach and I stand up, and when I do sit, I sit between my father and my top assistant. And my dad has been to the left of me when I turn around, or and look for his counsel during games. He was a huge part of our success. He was a huge part of our program. If you know anything about me and you know anything about our Penn State Wilkes-Barre program, and everywhere I've coached, I've preached family. Everything is first, family's first. I was hired by a guy who I seen as family, and Scott Minor, who was once my assistant coach at Missouri County Community College. My father is my assistant, and he was, he's my family, So we preach family, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've had success in the 5 years that I've been there. Literally because of the fact that when you walk through that door, you become a part of our family. And he was a huge part of that foundation, because we built it together. We built that program, Penn State Wilkes-Barre's program, over the last 5 years together.
And you mentioned your father in the hospital. I mean, could you just describe some of the circumstances surrounding the coronavirus? What happened?
So the national tournament ended for us. We lost in the first round. About 48 hours later, me and Dad comes back to New York, because I live in New York in the off season, and I just commute back and forth when I need to be on campus. We both live in New York, so we came back home by 17th, I want to say. No, I think about the 14th, 12th or 13th it was. Anyway, my dad was fine. We did all our shopping in Pennsylvania before we came back to make sure we had everything we needed here. We did shopping here one time. My father was live, healthy, and living. My father does an end of the year checkup, which is usually in March when our season is over. He does it so he doesn't have to come back and forth. My father goes to the doctor to do his checkup, and he was fine. Everything was perfect. Everything was normal. When I say perfect, normal. About 72 hours later, my dad started to show signs of pneumonia. He was weak. He was fatigued. Not so much shortness of breath or anything like that. He just was a little tired. But at this time, they're not telling us it's pneumonia. My father's just tired. My father's home for 48 hours. Everything is good. My father goes to the hospital to do to see what how everything is. He goes back to his primary doctor, which is basically in the hospital, and they check his blood, his oxygen levels, and things like that, and they admit him because they think that my father has pneumonia. My father takes the first coronavirus test, and he's negative. He doesn't have it. He takes another one about 4 days in after they admit him. He takes it, he gets tested again. The fifth day, another one comes back, and my father has it. My father was doing well still. His oxygen levels were fine. The only problem that they seen was that his kidneys were starting to fail. They were starting to they were damaged due to pneumonia, because at this point, before the coronavirus, they were saying he had pneumonia. And about 48 hours later, we got a call during the day that they were going to start temporary dialysis to try to help clean his kidneys, because they weren't his kidneys weren't flushing out. He wasn't urinating and moving. It wasn't flushing everything out, the bad out of his body. And so we consented to it, and then 24 hours later, we got a call basically saying that he was not getting worse, but his potassium levels were getting higher, and it was putting him at risk to go into cardiac arrest. And I got that call at about 7 o'clock, Monday the 30th, 8:18. I got a call that he died at 8:12 on March the 30th. So he was in the hospital for about 7 days. The first 4.5 days, they really just they deemed it as pneumonia, and he did not show signs of the coronavirus. My father, after in my opinion, he got it in the hospital. He got it when he went to his checkup, because my father was fine, and he was healthy. He was moving around. The day that he went to the hospital, the day they went back to his primary doctor, was literally because we started to see he just didn't. I won't say he didn't seem himself. He just went from being lively and happy to he just laid in the bed for a whole day, and that's never been my dad. And we was like, hey, you got to go back to you got to go back to the doctor. And when he went back to the doctor, they tested him that day, and they kept him for observation. And I think 48 hours later, we got the first no that he didn't have it, and then they tested him again. And at first, they said it was pneumonia. He just had pneumonia. So it's devastating. Now, there's small little details I left out. I'm just trying to give you the basic summary. But I say that I'm not at peace with it because for 4 out of the 5 days that they were saying that my father had, that his kidneys were starting to weaken, they consulted with us every day. They were consulting with a kidney specialist that they would let us know if they needed our consent to start temporary dialysis. And they did not basically take our consent for it until his 5th day, which is the 5th day that they brought it up. And that was the same day he died. And if they thought that he needed temporary dialysis 5 days prior, maybe they could have saved his life by actually starting the treatment 5 days before he passed away. Now, I'm not saying that he may live, but we'll never know, and I just feel like they kind of dropped the ball on that.
Right. So was it the doctor's opinion that it was the pneumonia coupled with the coronavirus that was just a fatal combination?
Yes.
Because otherwise, he said he was healthy.
Yeah. Otherwise, my dad was healthy. My dad wasn't your typical 71-year-old guy. I mean, my father was out and about. My father was very healthy. My father ran. My father didn't pretty much have any struggles. I mean, I think if you talk to anybody that knew Pops, they knew that he was normal. So that, seeing him 48 hours, 72 hours later, in the hospital, not in the hospital, but laying in a bed and just not himself, we knew something was wrong. My younger brother called me, and which he lives with my parents, and he said, hey, listen, Dad's been in the bed all day. And I'm like, well, I just talked to Dad last night, and we sat up on the phone till 2 o'clock in the morning talking about the national championship. And I'm like, I was on the phone with Dad till 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was fine. He said, and my brother said, I know, but I wake up 7 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning to go to work, and when I get back home, my brother Christopher is saying, Dad's still in the same place I left him, and that's not Dad, and And then that next day, it was like, hey, man, we got to take you to the doctor. But my father's last night at home, my father watched, and it's so crazy that my father's last night at home, he watched all 3 games that we won at the national tournament to win the national championship in the order. How scary is that? He watched the Elite 8 game, the Final 4 game, and the national championship game. And he called me throughout every game and just talked about that team and talked about that moment. And I remember sitting on the phone with him. I was actually up doing some late night recruiting, and he called me about 1:30. Like when I called me like 12:40 something that night, and he said, I'm watching, the last 10 minutes of the game. We sat on the phone. I didn't watch it. Usually, last year when we won, he would call me because the game's on YouTube, and he would call me, and we would sit and talk, and I would put the game on, and I would watch it at the same time he's watching it, and we would just go through it, and he's telling me, and then we talk about the celebration, and we're talking about how that team was really good, that team was special, and then we sat on the phone and we talked for another hour about the recruits that we were bringing in and the guys that we had our eyes on, and once at that time the coronavirus was not bad. It was bad in New York, but it wasn't. We weren't on lockdown. It was literally just go get your food, go get your water, go get your toilet paper, go get what you need, and everybody was going home. There was no quarantine. There was none of this. You was just doing it on your own. And we talked that night, and then we talked when he first got in the hospital because they sedated him and intubated him once he got there. So we talked for maybe 25 seconds the day that he got there, and I talked to the doctors maybe 5 times a day, 10 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, and then like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, like clockwork. So I had updates on my dad, and I was pretty much updating the family and things like that. And, this virus, man, it's dangerous. I've seen people that I know, other than my dad, I've seen a few people pass away from the neighborhood I grew up in. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, and I believe in God. I don't know what the book looks like. I don't know what the hands of time looks like, but if the coronavirus doesn't happen, my father's alive. The coronavirus doesn't happen, my father lives to 90, 100. My father had another, how you look at your old car and say, man, this car got about 3 more years in it. That body had about another 19, 20 years in it. He was lively, and he had a lot of grandkids who kept him alive, kept him lively, and he didn't stress for anything. My father was very religious man, but he was a people's person, and my father just wanted to make people happy. And he was probably the most servant leader I've ever been around. So I know for a fact my father would have been here. And this virus, it's taken a lot of good people, unfortunately.
And what neighborhood was your father living in, and what hospital was he at?
My father lived in the South Bronx, and he died in Lincoln Hospital in the South Bronx.
Okay, and is the South Bronx where you are living these days too?
No, actually, I live up. You would call it uptown. Well, you wouldn't. I live in the Morrisania area of the Soundview area. You would call it the Soundview area of the Bronx, which is probably a 15-minute drive from my father on the highway. But we're a nice little chunk away from each other, maybe 4 or 5 miles away from each other. 5 to 7 miles away from one another. Okay,
and you mentioned he was 71 and you're 39, right?
I'm 39, yes.
Okay, and this was your 5th year coaching at Penn State Wilkes-Barre?
Yes, this was my 5th season.
And, before we wrap up this interview, next year, getting back to the court, is it going to be tough? Is it going to be weird? Have you thought about coaching without your father on the sidelines?
Yeah, it's something that I've had to process the last couple of, last week or so. I can say this. It's going to be weird. My father prayed before every game, and that's now something that I'll do. My father led us in prayer before practice, which is something I'll do. It will be very weird to not live with my dad. We lived together, in Dallas. It's gonna be tough. I know it is. I know it's gonna be tough. I mean, yesterday was 2 days ago was Easter, and that was our first Easter, and we spent time with Easter. I mean, I'm gonna have to go through the 4th of July soon. Which is something we do, a family cookout. With me and him to take care of the grill. I'm going to have to go through, a few things before school starts that it's never going to be easy, but, I'm going to deal with it first. I have his national championship ring, and I'm going to wear it every game. He's going to be there with me on the sideline. We're going to win it for him. We've never won a conference championship in the history of the school. That was something that we didn't do. So I kind of feel like in my heart it's very unfinished business with certain things. And this season is for him. This season we're going to do something amazing, and it's going to be in his honor. And every time I'm recruiting, every time I'm out, everything that I need to do from here on out is for him. My father put me on the right track in the last 8 years of my career to become a great coach, helped me become a very good. He helped me become an amazing basketball player. Now he's helped start me become a great coach. And I'm going to take the baton, and I'm going to pretty much run by myself. But I don't feel like I'm alone. This moment of losing my father, I've gained so many people that were standing there that I just never knew. I think it's going to be tough on my coaching staff. I mean, me, Ray Harris, my assistant coach, and Darren Wingate, who's my assistant coach. Both guys have been here since shortly after I got the job. Me and Pops got the job. We're gonna figure it out. But this season's for him. I find some peace in it that last year we won a national championship, which is one of his goals. And this year, I guess I have to look at this season that we just had as was his victory lap. And now he's gone. But what we've done in these 5 years has been amazing. I mean, the school had never been number one in the country, and we did that earlier this year. No PSU, no Penn State school in the history, the Division I included, has never won a national championship in basketball. We did that. We're the only team in our conference to win a national championship. We're the only guys that have won. We have 221 seasons in the history of our program. And that's ours. That's me and Dad and my staffs and the players. So I think it's going to be different because the players coming forward don't know Pops. They don't know the legend of who he is. They'll learn the legend of who he is, but they didn't get a chance to play for him or be in his presence or know him. And I think that, but we have so much, we've preached family so long in our program that I think that the stories, the former players will come back. I think the guys will understand who they're playing for this season, despite the fact that the fact that we have a few people that we will be bringing in that never played for them. But this season is for him. Everything I do with my coaching career moving forward is for him. I know that he's watching. I know that he's with us, and I know that we're gonna be okay. It hurts. I'm crying right now as we're talking, but he meant everything to me. I lost my best. March 30th, I lost my best friend in the whole world. I lost my dad, but I lost my best friend. But the love, the people honoring, the people who have called, the text messages, the people who our lives he touched, not just over the last 8 years, because my father owned a barbershop and a beauty salon in my neighborhood that I grew up in for for 26 years, even that community has reached out. It's really shown me that my father was special. And I can go forward knowing that my father left a legacy that I have to basically take the baton and run with it. And that's what I'm going to do.